Okay, folks, good evening. It's Carl Marie here. This is Entrepreneurship 3A, and we're going to look at Learning Unit 2 tonight. That is the very last learning, or the very last chapter in the textbook, right at the end. If you look at the assignment, this learning unit refers directly to the assignment. The assignment's going to ask you to have a look at a social issue and create an app that solves that social issue. So this learning unit is directly related to that assignment that you're going to get asked to do. So let me just pop up the learning outcomes. In terms of the assignment, let me just mention something. We're following a different pattern this semester. We used to do a live session in prep of the assignments. We're not going to do that anymore. We'll do a recorded session, and I'll upload the recorded session. But what I will do is, in the next, the assignment is due in about a month, if I'm not mistaken. In the next week or two, I'll do the recording and I'll upload the recording. And then when we have a meeting again, I will allow for questions before and after that session, so that if you do have any questions regarding the assignment, that you have the opportunity to ask me directly, rather than just listen to a recording and then sort of say, I'm not sure. What does he mean when he says that type of thing? Or now we've got to have a whole long email conversation about what it means and what you need to do. So I'll give an opportunity for you to ask me live questions. As you are aware, the learning outcomes as they appear on the screen there, and those are the things you need to be able to master to be able to satisfy the outcomes of this particular learning unit. Guys, please make sure that you're using ARC, that you are doing the exercises on ARC. They really, really help you, not only to master the content, but they're also very, very useful for you in preparation of assignments and things like that. A lot of the exercises that have been specifically designed to roll out on the new learner management system on ARC have specifically been tailored to assist with assignments and so on. And for you guys that are studying online and that don't have as much contact with the lecturer as a face-to-face student would have, I would really advise that you use those or that avenue as a really good way to assist your learning and assist your development. Okay, so those are the learning outcomes. So what we're going to look at tonight is the whole idea of social entrepreneurship and what social entrepreneurship means and what it actually does for us. So social entrepreneurship, the role that social entrepreneurship plays, oops, sorry, my slides jumped there. The role that social entrepreneurship plays in a society is that it looks at social problems that we have. It looks at environmental problems that are out there in the world, and it looks at how can we solve these social and environmental problems in one way or another. And sometimes it's not a total solution. Sometimes it's just addressing part of the problem. So in other words, it's very difficult for a program to develop a program to solve the housing crisis in the world, right? It's such a big issue, and you're not going to be able to run a program that will solve all the housing issues that we have in the world and make sure that everybody's got a roof over their head. But you could have an innovative program that in a specific area or even in a specific country can address that program or address that problem in a specific manner, and maybe alleviate the problem or even alleviate the problem for a specific group of people. So social entrepreneurship, the role of it is to address these problems and to try to find ways of making these problems less of a problem. And Organizations that are involved in social entrepreneurship, they're typically non-profits and so on, but we'll talk about that just now. They measure their performance against the advancement of those goals, while companies, traditional ventures that are created by entrepreneurs, typically measure themselves against the how much profit the venture's making, how much market segment the venture's taking, how quickly the venture's growing, and these type of things. Well, in this world, we're trying to look at how do we create a venture that can address this social problem, that can bring about social change, and therefore we measure our performance by those social goals or those environmental goals that we've set ourselves, those things we want to address. How well are we addressing them? How well are we, and I want to say, are we making these problems going away? But as I said earlier, we're probably never going to make them go away. But that part of the problem that we decided to address, that segment, how does the problem now look in that segment? Have we alleviated the issues in those areas, or have we not really made an impact? That's how we will measure ourselves. Now, these NGOs and these non-profits, it's a new breed of them coming around because some of these are actually using techniques that are used in for-profit organizations, and we'll talk about the different types of social entrepreneurship organizations that we get a little bit later on this evening. But a lot of these are, although they traditionally non-profits or non-governmental organizations, they are actually now actively doing things that are not necessarily the typical things that traditionally were done. So they're actually doing things to make a profit, to take that profit, to use that profit to address whatever the environmental or the social goal is that they're trying to solve. And this is a bit of a different thing, and it's a different kettle of fish, but it's a very good turn because they're not relying so much on donations anymore or government grants anymore. They are now actually making their own money so that they can address the issues that they wanted to that they've decided to address. There's the textbook has quite a couple of these examples on what they're doing and so on. In the American context, there's a whole host of them. I'm not going to go through this at this point, but I will deal with it as we go along. Okay, Isabella, I'm going to answer that question of yours right at the end. Okay, but the quick thing is, yes, you can do a slideshow with a voiceover. Okay. Right, so we've got these things in the world. So I keep talking about these problems that they have in the world that and there's actually a name for these. These are called wicked problems. Now I know that sounds a bit strange, but wicked problems are an issue around the world, and the term wicked problems have specifically been linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, if you don't know what they are, I'm going to read the first part of the POE because that talks to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that they basically have set up and say, these are the big things in the world. These are the big issues in the world that we're trying to address, and we would like to see what we can do about them. They are complex problems. They are not problems that have a clear solution. In other words, it's not although the name wicked problems is an old name, they've been linked to the development goals, but these are not problems that can normal, rational, logical problem-solving skills that we use on other problems can solve them. They've got information that's contradictory to each other. It differs from place to place, from environment to environment, how the problem manifests. A solution that might alleviate in one place, not going to work in another place. And also they tend to elicit quite a bit of debate. People don't really agree about them. The classic, I spoke about housing earlier, and we've actually, in a community that I used to stay in, we had a lot of debate about this, because we had quite a problem with vagrants, and people were sort of saying, we must get the vagrants off our streets. They must go away. And then there's the other half of the community that's saying, okay, that's fine, but where must they go? And some people are saying, well, I don't care, just as long as it's not here. But that doesn't solve the problem, right? If you've got homeless people or vagrants or whatever you want to call them in a community, it's not good enough just to say, I don't want them in my community. You need to address that problem, because if they're not in your community, they're going to be in the next community. And that's why these wicked problems are contradictory, and they elicit debate, because people, and they bring people into serious conflict, because they are so emotive. A thing like water, for example. If you go up into northeast Africa, you find that there are serious battles being fought, and there are I'm hesitant to call it war, but it's hinging on war around water, because we're starting to go into the desert area of the Sahara there, and people are struggling. People have got animals, people want to do crops, and the area is drying out. So where there is water, people are going there, but the people that already stay there are trying to say, no, you can't come here, and there's no place for you here. And they say, yes, but I must have water. And in some cases, it's not even for my animals, it's for me and my family to survive. So that makes it really difficult. And these are wide-ranging issues: the environment, poverty, sustainability, equality, education, child mortality, and it goes on and on and on. And some of these problems are, most of these problems are worldwide problems. But it depends how it manifests where you are. Some of them are easier to address in some locations, and some are just, you just simply can't address it. It's just massive. But these wicked problems are exactly what the social entrepreneurs are looking for, because these are the type, it's like our traditional entrepreneurs that you've learned about up to now. They see a gap in the market, and that's all that they're waiting for. They see that gap. I want to exploit that gap. I've got an idea into that market, launch my product, sell my product, grow my company. That same excitement that the traditional entrepreneur has is the same excitement the social entrepreneur sees, or has, when they see these wicked problems, and they say, well, this problem in this context, I have this idea, this is how I can go about solving it, this is the way that I can address it in this community. And they approach these problems with the same type of zeal, and the same type of actions that a normal entrepreneur, and I'm saying normal entrepreneur, that a traditional entrepreneur would do for a business opportunity. You know, these you can look at the something like the water crisis in the world. There's like, I think the number is 600 million people that don't have access around the world to clean, safe water. So you know, 600 million people are quite a lot of people, and there's a whole host of different NGOs, different groups of people that try to address these issues. Anybody from guys out in Kenya that have a system that they teach people where they take simply a 2-liter Coke bottle, you know, these plastic bottles, and you fill that bottle with water that's not safe to drink. It's got bacteria and all types of things in it. And you simply put it on the top of your roof and you let it lie in the sun for a full day. The water in that bottle gets so hot in that sun that it kills all the bacteria and the water's safe to drink. So it's people that address the problem in that way, and they go out into communities and they teach people this, through to people putting on NGOs doing big filtration systems that feed whole villages with water, through to Stellenbosch universities, where they have developed a straw that you drink through the straw, and the straw filters the water and it takes away all all the dangerous stuff. Kevin, I see that quote that you put up there, the wars of the 21st century will be fought over water, said Ishmael Seragelden. And yes, that's 100% true. Water is one of our most valuable commodities, and it's one of our most wasted commodities. A stupid thing. In South Africa, we struggle with waterworks, right? We struggle to purify water. Lots of places already, people are saying, no, don't drink the tap water, you know, rather go down to your local supermarket, go buy 5 liters of fresh water or purified water because it's safer than the tap water. But we still privileged enough that in many places we can drink the water. We spend all that money and have all that difficulty to clean our water so that the water coming out the tap can drink, but then we flush our toilets and we wash our washing with that water. It's madness. There's a lot of other water that we could use to flush toilets, even washing. You don't have to have potable or drinkable water to be able to wash your washing. It's not necessary. You don't need water that clean. And obviously to flush a toilet, you don't need water that's that clean. Okay, so there's different types of social entrepreneurs, and we're going to look at 3 types. The first is the social purpose ventures. These guys they try to resolve a social problem and make a profit. In other words, they're looking big picture, right? They are trying to sort of get address a part of the problem as a whole. Sorry, the problem as a whole, and to make some kind of a profit. You then have the social consequences entrepreneurship, which is a non-profit, also a for-profit venture, whose primary market impact is social. In other words, what they're doing is they're also addressing a problem, but it's only through the impact of what they're doing that they're addressing the problem. They're not trying to solve the big picture like the social purpose ventures. It's a consequence of their actions that a problem is solved. For example, you have somebody that makes and I'm trying to remember what the company's name is. They work out of Hope Bay. They make satchels and bags and all of these type of things, and they use these massive billboards, these plastic billboards. They use the old billboards and they make these satchels and so on. It's a well-known company. Sorry, their name slipped now. They're not going to solve the problem of pollution, plastic pollution, and plastic going into our rubbish dumps. But they are making stuff, and because as a consequence of what they are doing by making stuff out of this waste plastic, they are now addressing some of the plastic pollution that goes in. So that'll be social consequences entrepreneurs, while social purposes ventures are specifically trying to solve the complete plastic problem all over the world. So they are much bigger thinker. Then we have the enterprising non-profits. Now, enterprising non-profits are people who are using income-making activities. So they're actually generating an income in the traditional way that traditional entrepreneurs do, except that they're addressing a problem and making money to get more money to start addressing more. There's guys out, and I think that's an example in the textbook as well, I'm not sure. They are named 4 Oceans. And what these guys do is they actually, when fishermen collect plastics, they actually pay them for the plastics. And what they then do is they melt the plastics and they make bracelets, arm bracelets out of the plastics, and they sell those arm bracelets. And the money that they make from the arm bracelets, they then use again to pay the fishermen for plastics. So that's a typical example of an enterprising non-profit. There's another way through this, and these are venture philanthropic funding. So this is where venture capitalists will go, and they will take some form of a grant, a loan, they will give money in one way or another. Sometimes it's a loan, sometimes it's a grant, sometimes it needs to be paid back, sometimes not. Specifically to be used to solve one of these wicked problems, or to address one of these wicked problems, so that you are able to because they want to see these problems solved. They would like to help with the big picture solving of these problems. So they therefore give some money to try to help solve these problems. So this whole idea of these enterprising non-profits are using the traditional entrepreneurial model. So it's a hybrid model of social entrepreneurship. They're not just doing the social goals part. So the traditional NGOs, the traditional non-government organizations, or if you prefer non-profits that we used to have, their goals have always been to address some social problem. And they've done this through funding exercises. You'll find, you walk into a shopping center, there's guys that said, don't you want to sign up, pay 10 Rand a month to give a donation to this organization? Or they approach big companies. In South Africa, they approach, for example, the Lotto, and the Lotto might give them some money. So those are the traditional funding models that your NGOs and these guys have used. Excuse me. The new way is, yes, they still get some of the funding, but they use this hybrid module where they do use they set themselves economic goals to try to make money out of services that they can provide. Some of these guys do advisory services. So they will, if you've got a factory, for example, and you know your factory is causing waste and you want to reduce that waste, either for social reasons, or because the law has changed in the country where you are, or the city that you are, forcing you to reduce your waste. Then some of these guys, for example, will hire themselves out as consultants. They'll come in, they'll give you advice, they'll show you ways in which you can reduce your harm. They will show you ways in which you could possibly repurpose some of your waste, or recycle some of your waste into other products, or to sell it to somebody who can use it as an input into their processes. And you'll then pay them for that consulting service. And with those paid consulting service, that's how they then get more money to be able to fund their activities. So the whole funding issue for social entrepreneurs is a problem. So they need to find some kind of way of funding themselves, and a lot of these guys do this through, as I say, they trying to get a return on investment on their social impact, what they're doing. So they going out and they either trying to make the funds themselves, or they're going to, and this is happening more and more, where there are these venture capitalists, but also impact investment funds. Now, what an impact investment fund is, it's a fund where I specifically invest money into the fund as an investor. That fund funds NGOs and so on that are addressing environmental issues, but that are also trying to make a profit. And some of that profit then comes back in the form of dividends back to the fund. So I then, as the investor, One, I know I'm investing in something that is green or something that is environmentally friendly. And two, I'm getting some kind of an income from that. And typically the expectation of income from those funds are lower than from traditional funds. But you still, it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling around your heart, and you feel you're doing something good for the environment. There's another little part of this, and this is the microfinance as a source of social funding, which is a separate thing, but I do want to um, touch on this. And why I want to touch on this is because a lot of the work that these guys do is through assisting people that are in dire straits to help themselves. So microfinancing as a source of social financing is the classic example, and this is one of the examples in the book, but it's also, you can go read up about it, is Grameen Bank. It's a bank in India. Grameen specializes in micro loans. I think the biggest loan they typically give is something like $25. But what Grameen does is they help the poorest of the poor, people that don't have access to formal banking, and they give them loans. So they would, in a village, for example, um, get the village to say, yes, we will support this person, and this person then makes a loan, and they buy, for example, a sewing machine, and they buy some cloth, and then they start making clothing. And as they sell the clothing, they pay that $25 loan back. And the village where they come from actually is the surety for the loan. So the village says, look, we will support the person, we will buy their clothing, and if it turns out that this business doesn't work and that business turns belly up, then we will make sure that as a village, we will repay the money that that person loaned. So that's a very important way where, and these are run by social entrepreneurs. A very important way how social entrepreneurs can address some of the problems out there is by this microfinancing as part of social entrepreneurship. Okay, so in the biggest picture, your social entrepreneur has got a variety of stakeholders, and the stakeholders work slightly different. There's three, and I'm going to show you the picture now of what this looks like. But there's three different aspects to what influences the various stakeholders. It's power. So a stakeholder that has power, they can make things happen. So they've got some way or some power that they've got either socially, they've got a network of people, it might be political power, they might have the backing of the broader community, and that power can then be used to either advance your social entrepreneurship venture, or it can be used negatively. It can be used to damage your social entrepreneurship venture. Then you've got the legitimacy. These are people that have a genuine interest in your business, and that have got some legitimate reason to be involved in your business. Once again, that legitimacy can stem from something like the person supporting you financially, and therefore they are actually somebody that is important in that for your venture. It can also be somebody that's important in the social ill that you're trying to address, a chairman of a community organization or something like that. And then the third thing that they have is urgency. In other words, these are people that demand immediate attention. This is the guy that's standing with a placard outside protesting against something you're doing or something you're not doing. So they don't have power or legitimacy, but they need to be spoken to now, because they can in the long run they're going to do you some damage. If you look at the textbook, it's very difficult to see this slide, but basically what the slide does is it does these different things for each one of the power, legitimacy, and urgency, and it names them, and I'll speak about the names now, and then it speaks to the overlaps between those and the central one, and that eventually ends up giving us 7 different types of stakeholders. So your first stakeholder that you have is your stakeholder, and this is Ronald K. Mitchell in the 1990s proposed this. So the first one is your dormant stakeholders, or your sleepers. These guys have good power, right? But they don't use their power. They sit on their power unless they're given a reason to do so. So if they want to act, they will act, but they'll only act if they must act. And this act can be in a negative or positive way. And the key that what you've got to do with these people, you've got to be transparent, keep them informed, keep them in the loop, send them a newsletter, and they'll be happy. But if they get disgruntled, they'll use their power. So they may have, for example, a following on social media. And then they might say about your NGO, well, that CEO doesn't really care for the cause. They just have to make money for themselves and so on. And that hurts you then in the bigger picture because they can abuse that power. Discretionary stakeholders, they don't have real power, but they have legitimacy. They might be the guys that donate to your organization. They might be the guys that are willing to support your cause. So you want to keep those people happy. Then the next grouping is the demanding stakeholders. These are the guys that are screaming and shouting, right? They have urgency. They could, one of the reasons why they could have urgency, or why you should consider them as having urgency, is they could be the only people talking against you. But sometimes the fact that they are the only people talking against you is a problem. They are people might listen to them simply because they are the people with a voice. Guys, I'm seeing my cameras jumping in and out of focus. I'm just going to switch it off for a while. There we go, because I think it's going to be irritating for you on the other side. So people protesting outside a national conference because they don't believe in what you're doing. They're noisy and so on, but in many cases they smaller people, and they're not people that you really have to worry about. Now we start moving to, and I'm just going to go back to that. Now we start looking at the overlaps, these yellow blocks. So you have the dominant stakeholders. So your dominant stakeholders are these people that have both power and legitimacy. So they can have a very strong influence on your organization, because not only do they have the power to speak to the community, but they also have an influence on your organization. So they have got, they would be a person who's got a lot of power in the community, but they also want a person that's donating a lot of money to you. So you need to make sure that you communicate, you respond to their queries, and you ask them for advice and so on, because you want to maintain your relationship with these stakeholders. You don't want to lose your relationship with them, because it will be bad for your organization as a whole, right? Then we have the dependent stakeholders. They have urgency and legitimacy. So they are somebody that are legitimately involved, or legitimately linked to your organization, but they're also making a noise. So they're also out there screaming and shouting. Because they've got legitimacy and they've got urgency, you need to address them and give them attention immediately. Because if you don't address their issue, their urgency, they might take the legitimacy away from you and walk away with their legitimacy. The dangerous ones are those with power and urgency. So they have power to hurt you, and they're also shouting and screaming. Once again, those are people that you need to address immediately. The last one is the center block, which is definitive power. Just want to go back. That's that dark blue. They have everything, right? So these guys have legitimacy, they have power, and they have urgency. And now if you've followed the conversation so far and you understand what legitimacy, power, and urgency means, you will understand that these are the most important guys. If you've got a person that's got all of those, and most people have got them in one form or another, you need to seriously speak to those people. You need to make sure that they're happy, that they're informed, that they understand what you're doing, they understand why you're doing what you're doing, and that they're comfortable with what you're doing. Because if you let these guys, and I want to use the word, get away from you, and get on and you get on the wrong side of them, you're going to have a serious problem. You need to look at this, look at them and look after them for your own benefit, and longevity of your organization. Now, there is one more aspect I want to address, and that's the difference between social entrepreneurship and corporate social responsibility. So CSR, corporate social responsibility, you guys have dealt with that previously, and that's the things that a company does within their greater business environment, to help uplift communities, whether it is donating to a local hospital, whether it is taking a group of people out to an animal shelter and assisting in the animal shelter, whether it is giving bursaries to poor students. It's all these things that companies do. And what we need to keep in mind is that is corporate social responsibility will remain, and companies will keep on doing that to try to address social ills and so on. You just need to keep one thing in mind, that company is still chasing a profit, right? And although they will put, many companies will seem to put equal emphasis on the economic goals and the CSR goals, and they use it to motivate their employees and so on. The fact of the matter is that when the chips are down, right, they're going to cut that. They're going to cut that funding. If they if they get into trouble, and they although they want to do good, they're going to cut the funding, because they're going to look at the economic bottom line of the organization first, right? And they're not going to spend money on corporate social responsibility if the company's going through a tough time. On the other side, we have the social entrepreneurship guys, right? Their goal is the pursuance of these social ills and to address it. This is their profit, right? And if their money that they're making through their profit-making side, if that diminishes, they're not going to try to do less on the social side, because they measure themselves against not their profit, but against the social goals. So that's the key difference. At the end of the day, CSR is still measured against how much profit does the company make. You know, the ultimate goal of that company is still the profit part. And we can talk about people, planet, profit, and all of those things. But the social entrepreneur measures themselves against their goals. So guys, I have, what I have done is I get there. I've put some lecture resources on ARC. So if you go into ARC and you go into Learning Unit 2 and you scroll down, you click on Learning Unit 2, open it up, you scroll down, you'll find lecture resources. There's a very nice article on social entrepreneurship, what it's about and how it's about. And then there's a TED Talk of a South African lady. The TED Talk is a bit, I won't say it's dated, it's older. The article is quite new. But the TED Talk, I think, was in 2017, 2018. But it still explains what social entrepreneurship is. It's a lady from I think she's from Gibbs University, that did a TED Talk on that. But yes, I think you'll find it interesting. That's the end of what I need to tell you tonight. Are there any questions? And once again, my email is up there. If you do have any questions that you come up later with, or when you're working through the unit, because remember, guys, you still have to work through these units. What I give you here is an absolute highlight package. But I'm going through an hour, a chapter in an hour, or learning unit in an hour, and there's a heck of a lot more to it. What you'll also find, what I've also uploaded, is a pacer to basically tell you what you've got to do when. And it basically, like next week we don't have class, but you need to work through chapter 3. I will then, on the following week when we have a class, I will work through chapter 3. And you will be in a much better position to understand and follow and ask questions if you have worked through that chapter before you come to class. Folks, any questions, anything you want to ask, anything you want to say, any other questions around the assignment that you might want to ask me now, or are you guys okay? Please remember, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again now, is that the assignment is not a quick one. I know you guys are busy. I know most of you are working and so on. This is not an assignment that you can start the weekend before. My suggestion to you is go read the assignment now so that you understand that there's a whole video clip that you've got to make, a 7 to 10 minutes long video clip. But before you can make the video clip, you must come up with the idea, etc., etc. And then there's still what I consider a complete assignment of 2,000 to 2,500 words. So the sooner you get cracking at that, and the sooner you get thinking and have something put together, the better for you, because it's not something that's lastminute.com. Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, guys, no questions, because then I'm going to end the session. Thanks, Isabella. Okay, guys, keep well. Enjoy the evening, and please send me emails, ask me questions, and we'll chat soon. Keep well. Bye-bye.